Okay, model for my camera. Model for the camera. There we go. There we go. Work the camera. Catwalk. Uh-oh. Turn it out.
You're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? You know, before I get into these terrific fights that we've seen tonight, I remember back in the day, and I say back in the day like it was a long time ago, but back in the Friday Night Fights days, where we would watch Friday Night Fights every Friday as boxing fans. Now, even though as a boxing fan, I watched those Friday Night Fights every single week, but it was really frustrating because some of the cards were so terrible. And I used to say to myself, man, why can't we get to see fights on the level of HBO Boxing After Dark, Showtime, Showbox, etc., etc.? Why do we have to watch some fights that are almost worse than pay-per-view undercard fights? Sometimes, I mean, every now and then you got a good one, don't get me wrong. But the majority of times, those cards were not good at all. I mean, some of those cards were so terrible that I would just watch Friday Night Fights that week just to hear the breaking news from Brian Kenny. When Brian Kenny used to basically report the news and interview the fighters and talk about the upcoming fight, or, you know, do a review on last week's pay-per-view fight. Sometimes Brian Kenny's segment was better than the entire fight card on Friday Night Fights. So the reason why I'm telling you guys all of this is because now we have real fights on ESPN. Now we have those type of HBO After Dark type of fights, those Showbox type of fights on ESPN, thanks to the PBC series. So Premier Boxing Champions puts on another terrific boxing card tonight, and it opened up with Patrick Szymanski being tested, an undefeated fighter, by the way, Patrick, being tested going into deep waters against Wilkie Camford. Now, Szymanski, he pretty much took control of the fight in the first 4 rounds, at least, by outboxing the much shorter Wilkie Camford. Basically, Szymanski, with him being a lot taller, he took advantage of that height and that reach, and he was out jabbing Camford and basically winning the rounds. But around the 5th or the 6th round, there was a little bit of a shift in momentum, and all of a sudden, Wilkie Camford started to get closer to Szymanski, and he started to land these vicious right hands. So all of a sudden, Szymanski, he was swimming in deep water for the first time in his career. So he was really tested. But Szymanski, he dug deep, he pulled out a second win, and the next thing you know, he was back in the fight. He hurt Camford a couple times in the fight. The first time he hurt him, I think it was around the 2nd or the 3rd round. He hurt him with a uppercut, and he hurt him again towards the end of the fight. So Szymanski, he was tested. It was his toughest fight, but he won a unanimous decision. Now going into the main event. The main event, we've seen a big upset. I mean, I guess you can call it a big upset because Jamel Herring, he was the favorite. You have an undefeated Olympian stepping up for the very first time. And this is once again what I mean when I tell you guys, whenever you watch a PBC card, 9 times out of 10, the favorite is going into a fight where he is going to be tested. Okay? Last week on the Keith Thurman versus Sean Porter undercard, we seen the battle of the undefeateds. It was Swift Jarrett Hurd versus undefeated Oscar Molina. Very, very tough fight. And Jarrett Hurd, he came out victorious. A week before that, we seen Fanfara go in there and get knocked out in the first round by Joe Smith Jr. And tonight on PBC, we got another upset. So let's go ahead and talk about this fight. So Jamel Herring, once again, he's undefeated and he's stepping up in competition. But he's not just stepping up in competition. He's fighting against Denis Shafikov. And Denis Shafikov is a little buzzsaw, aggressive, with power, amateur pedigree, way more experience as a professional boxer. He came into this fight with only 2 defeats, but both of his defeats were in title fights. So the only 2 guys he lost to was Rances Barthélemy and Miguel Vasquez. So this was a serious step up in competition for Jamel Herring fighting on PBC. Now, of course, the majority of people thought that Jamel Herring was going to win this fight. He was the favorite. But I seen, right after I watched the first round, I knew it was going to be a tough fight for Jamel Herring, because you could see right off the bat, even though Herring is 5 inches taller than Denis Shafikov, you would think that would be an advantage for Herring, but it turned out to be more of an advantage for Shafikov, because he knew how to get on the inside, and because Herring was fighting really defensive and he wasn't really controlling Shafikov with a jab, Shafikov was basically able to walk right through the front door and get those inside hooks in whenever he wanted to. And he was extremely accurate with those right and left hooks that he was throwing on the inside. This was a really interesting fight when you look at the contrast, because it reminds me of Fight Night. For those of you guys who played Fight Night, you remember whenever you played online, some people would play with Mike Tyson and other people would play with Muhammad Ali. Obviously, when you played with Muhammad Ali, you had to master the outside game, keeping him at bay with the jab and the right hand. And vice versa with Mike Tyson, you had to master the inside game. So in this game tonight, it was Shafikov that mastered the inside game. And throughout this fight, Herring looked very uncomfortable. He never seemed to be in the position that he wanted to be in, because he started off the fight using a lot of foot movement, and it looked like he was about to possibly set something up. But as I kept waiting for him to set something up, I noticed he really didn't have a plan. And as he was moving around, Shafikov was getting closer and closer to him. Next thing you know, Herring was moving around the ring. He backed up to the ropes, and Shafikov caught him with a vicious hook and knocked Herring down. From that point, that's when Herring, he tried to shift gears and basically fight on the inside. Once he fought on the inside, he did good for a minute, but then he started to get caught even more. It's interesting because Shafikov, he was really using his height as an advantage, because he was so short and Herring was so tall, especially for a lightweight. Herring could not really find the target, especially when it comes to headshots. So you had this guy who was 5 inches taller that was trying to hit this shorter guy with body punches, and the longer Herring stayed on the inside, the more vulnerable he was for getting hit with those hellacious hooks that kept hurting Herring throughout the fight. So you fast forward towards the end of the fight, and Herring, he gets hurt a couple times. He comes back to his corner, and his trainer, Mike Stafford, he tells him, "Look, man, if you don't show me something, I'm going to stop the fight." And Herring, he came out. He got caught with one good shot. As soon as he got caught with that shot, his corner, they stopped the fight. So that's pretty much how this fight went. It was an upset. Congratulations to Denis Shafikov. Once again, these are some of the great benefits when fighters are signed to PBC. Because Denis Shafikov just came off of a loss against Rances Barthélemy. And now, a couple months later, here he is back in the ring on TV fighting against an undefeated Olympian in Jamel Herring. And now Denis, he wins that fight, so it puts him right back in the position he was before he lost to Rances Barthélemy. I'm going to tell you right now, Denis Shafikov is a really good fighter. He's a very aggressive fighter, but he's not sloppy and wild. He's an aggressive fighter with a pretty good defense. I ain't going to say he got the best defense in the world, but he has a good defense to be such an aggressive fighter. And he's southpaw on top of all of that. I mean, just watching the Shafikov versus Rances Barthélemy fight, it gives you a very good indication of how good Shafikov is. Because in the first half of that fight, Rances Barthélemy, he was actually trying to fight Shafikov on the inside. And it was extremely close. Because, see, I'm used to seeing Rances dominate his opponents. But when he was fighting Shafikov on the inside, it was like back and forth. And even though you still could have leaned towards Rances, you couldn't complain if the judges would have gave some of those early rounds to Denis Shafikov. That's how close the rounds were. Then all of a sudden, Rances Barthélemy, he went into plan B. And once he went into plan B and showed a little versatility, that's when he started to frustrate and confuse and outbox the shit out of Denis Shafikov. So that's not what we've seen tonight. Tonight we've seen the boxer get frustrated and basically outworked. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of Denis Shafikov. He's fighting at the lightweight division. Now you have Mikey Garcia that's with PBC. I wouldn't mind watching that fight, Mikey Garcia versus Denis Shafikov. Now we've seen when Mikey Garcia fought against Salido, even though he knocked down Salido about 6 times, it's so funny because outside of the knockdowns, Salido was actually doing really good in the fight. He was really pushing Mikey Garcia to the limit. So that would be a great fight. I still believe Mikey Garcia versus Jamel Herring would be a great fight. So there's a lot of fights that can be made when it comes to the PBC series. We know that they have damn near 200 fighters signed. So there's always going to be somebody good to match up with someone like Mikey Garcia or even Denis Shafikov. So once again, congratulations to Denis. He pulled off the upset. And congratulations once again to PBC for putting on another terrific fight card on free TV. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
Okay. Hi. No, I got.
When you do it. When you do it.
Hi. You're watching Dante's Boxing Nation. No.
That was good.
Again,
That was close.
no.
Yeah.
You're not
Close?
You're going to start.
Yeah. Dante, but you have an accent, that's fine. But it's Dante with an A. Dante's
Boxing Nation. Dante.
Yeah.
This is like she's going to go.
See, let me see.
Hi, Dante.
Let me see you say it. Can you say it?
Okay.
All right.
Hi, you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're neighbors, actually.
Hey now.
Hello.